This is Chris Cuomo, the presenter of Cuomo Primetime on CNN. On Thursday, July 2nd, Cuomo spoke with CNN political analyst Harry Enton about some recent polls and how they spelled trouble for President Trump.
A Monmouth Poll has Biden at 12, a new Pew Poll, similar Biden at 10. Why do you believe these numbers at this point in time?
I mean, look, we have a lot of them. So that indicates that these polls are well, all these results are well outside the margin of error.
Enton is referring to the many polls that indicate that President Trump is trailing behind Joe Biden. Are these polls an accurate reflection of how voters feel about their choice in November? Or who knows? For now, though, let's focus on the polls that Harry Enton is talking about in this segment. First, there was the Pew Research poll that was conducted from June 16th to the 22nd, where they asked registered voters who would handle certain issues better. Who would make good decisions about economic policy? Trump edged out Biden by 3 percentage points. But when it came to handling law enforcement and criminal justice issues, Biden scored 3 points higher than Trump. Which is odd considering that the 1994 crime bill, which Democrats hate and would love to see repealed, was written by then Senator Joe Biden. Democrats blame the bill for the rise of harsher criminal justice policies, including the 3 strikes law, which contributed to so-called mass incarceration. Biden also scored 3 points higher than President Trump on foreign policy. And we all know how quid pro Joe finesses cooperation from other countries, like Ukraine, for example.
And I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. They were walking out to press conference and said, no, I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
And of course, it's sheer coincidence that the prosecutor Biden demanded be fired was investigating Burisma Holdings, a gas company where Biden's son Hunter just happened to have a seat on the board. Nothing to see here, guys, it's just bad optics. And let's not forget Joe Biden's take on China.
China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. They're not bad folks.
Biden also scored higher than Trump when it came to handling race relations and bringing the country closer together. Man, I don't know about that one.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Look, here's the deal.
There are probably anywhere from 10 to 15% of the people out there that are just not very good people.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
He's perfect. And lastly, Biden also scored higher than Trump when asked who would better handle the health crisis. But asking voters if Biden would handle the health crisis better than Trump is very broad. Does it mean that Biden would have handled it better at this very moment if he was president? Or do they mean after Biden is sworn into office next January? And if that's the case, how do they know where we're going to be progress-wise in the fight against the virus 6 months from now?
I think, if you look at the polling that we have right now, what you see is that Joe Biden is the one who is doing the best right now on COVID.
And if you think that Joe Biden would have handled the health crisis better than Trump, let me remind you that Biden was against any type of travel restriction that was designed to limit the spread of the virus. Not to mention that he was holding campaign rallies back in March after there were confirmed cases, so I'll leave it up to you to make a judgment.
This is my little sister, Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh, no, Val, you switched on me. This is my wife, this is my sister. They switched on me.
So that takes us to slide 3 here. Handling of coronavirus. Biden is beating Trump. Explain this to me when Biden has nothing to do with it.
Well, I think what it means is, if you look at the Pew Research poll that was out this week, they asked how confident you are that someone will be able to handle the coronavirus outbreak. And what we saw was Joe Biden was leading by double digits.
But the language on the slide doesn't match the wording of the poll question. The language on the slide implies that they are both somehow handling the health crisis, and the voters are more confident that Biden is handling it better. The actual poll question posed to registered voters was, are you very or somewhat confident that Biden or Trump can handle the public health impact of the coronavirus outbreak? And Harry Enton doesn't actually explain how Joe Biden can be handling the health crisis better than Trump when Biden doesn't currently hold public office. Okay, you might be thinking that these results might be a little skewed. And you might be right. According to Pew, there were 3,577 registered voters who responded to the poll. Of those respondents, 1,540 identified as Republican or leaned Republican, while 1,946 identified as Democrats or leaned Democrat, which means that there were 406 more Democrats who took part in the poll than Republicans. That's 26% more Democrats. But that's okay, because it's a weighted poll. Let me explain. Pew is getting their results from the American Trends Panel, which is made up of randomly selected US adults. Once invited into the ATP, panelists are asked to participate every time Pew conducts one of these polls, which is referred to as a wave. And that means that Pew is asking the same panelists if they prefer Trump or Biden over and over and over again. But what about the fact that there are 26% more panelists that identify as Democrat or leaning Democrat? Well, to make up for the unevenness, Pew uses variables such as gender, age, education, race Hispanic origin, born inside versus outside the US among Asians, country of birth among Hispanics, years lived in the United States, home internet access, region and metropolitan status, volunteerism, voter registration, and party affiliation. You got all that so far? Then they analyzed Trump approval among panelists who responded to both this polling wave and waves 59 or 64, also aligned the sample to an additional dimension for Trump approval from the previous wave in order for Trump approval from the current wave to cleanly reflect change in panelists' attitudes over time. See, it's all very simple. Just accept the results and give up. Now let's look at the Monmouth Poll, where Biden is beating Trump by 12 percentage points. If you look at the poll demographics of the 733 registered voters who participated, 29% self-identified as Republican, 33% identified as Democrat, and 38% identified as independent. More people identified as independent? That can't possibly be an accurate snapshot of the electorate. But CNN's gonna run with it because they want you to believe that this man is crushing President Trump by double digits.
My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other guy. Give me a look, though, okay?
And what is the distinguishing feature of this next slide on the issue of trust on coronavirus?
Well, I think what's so key here is, sometimes you see certain variables and you wonder whether or not they're correlated. But if you trust Joe Biden over Donald Trump handling the coronavirus, those voters are going over 95% for Joe Biden to just 2% for Donald Trump. So if Donald Trump is going to come back in this election...
Okay, so first of all, if you look at the methodology of the CNN SSRS poll, they interviewed a total of 1,259 adults, including an oversample of 250 Black non-Hispanic adults. Among the entire group, 32% described themselves as Democrats, 25% described themselves as Republicans, and a whopping 44% described themselves as independents or members of another party. But wait, there's more. Remember that African Americans were oversampled. So when it comes to the breakdown of registered voters, 362 were Black. In other words, 32% of respondents were African American, despite being 13% of the population. So while African Americans were oversampled, Asians, who make up nearly 6% of the population, and Hispanic and Latino voters, who make up 18% of the population, were wildly underrepresented in the poll. No matter how you try and spin it, this is a skewed poll. So much so that the Trump campaign sent CNN a cease and desist letter. But of course, CNN defended the poll and the results and basically told the Trump campaign to F off. Just because you present a poll to the public and say that the results are legitimate doesn't mean that they're actually legitimate. Anyway, let's get back to this 96% Biden to 2% Trump thing.
And what is the distinguishing feature of this next slide on the issue of trust on coronavirus?
Ooh, I know. It's incredibly misleading and deceptive. I know you're shocked. So, on page 11 of the poll, registered voters were asked the following. Now, I'm going to mention a few issues, and for each one, please tell me if you think Joe Biden or Donald Trump would better handle that issue if they were elected president. And when it comes to the response of the health crisis, the results show that Biden scored 55% compared to Trump's 41%. So when you compare this graphic to the poll results, you might be thinking, gee, this doesn't match up to the poll numbers at all. And to be fair, I was confused as well, which is why I had to update this video. Because I have integrity. So what Enton is saying is that out of the 55% of voters who trust Biden more on coronavirus, 96% of them will vote for Biden. Which doesn't make a lot of sense. 55% of registered voters trust Biden on coronavirus, whereas 55% of registered voters are voting for Biden. So where is Enton getting this 96% number? Wouldn't it be 100%? I mean, there might be something in the raw data, but Enton isn't showing his math. But, just trust what he says and don't question it. And with this graphic, Enton is trying to present these numbers as an indicator of how strong Biden is doing among voters, but it doesn't mean that Biden is doing better than Trump overall. It just suggests that Biden voters trust Biden more on coronavirus. But you could also say the same thing about Trump. 41% of poll respondents trust Trump more than Biden on coronavirus, which is exactly the percentage of poll respondents who are voting for Trump. So putting up this graphic showing trust among Biden voters and how it supposedly correlates into votes, but not comparing it with a graphic showing trust among Trump voters is not only very confusing, but also very, very deceptive. And they knew exactly what they were doing.
What's so important is that he has to regain trust on the coronavirus. Otherwise, frankly, Christopher, he's done.
No, it means the Trump trust is gone when it comes to Biden voters, right? But then again, I'd venture a guess that they never trusted Trump in the first place because Orange Man bad. Regardless, it's a dishonest analysis. In other words, it's just CNN being CNN. Thanks for watching, sharing, and hitting that like button. Sorry for the double upload, but I needed to make a correction, and I want to make sure that I get things right. Anyway, a big special thanks to Poofy for her help with the script this week, and be sure to follow her on Twitter and Parler at Saint Tsundere, and I'm sure I butchered that, and follow me on both platforms as well at Don't Walk Run. Be sure that you're still subscribed to the channel, and as always, I hope to see you next time.